Time now for the news review segment. We have a number of topics to look at, and so hopefully my guest will help me maximize the time so we can do justice to all of these issues. And if time permits, we'll get into other matters as well. Joining me in studio, we have Elvis Darko. He's the editor of the News Center newspaper, newscenter.com. Good morning, Elvis. Good to have you. And then we have Hamza Suhini. Hamza is a member of the NDC's communications team. But just so you know, he's a private legal practitioner as well. Good morning, Hamza.
Good morning.
Good to have you. I noticed that now you have been busy on the weekends here.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I think I've appeared on 2 different occasions. So,
consecutively?
Not really.
Not really. Okay. Very well. Good to have you. Let's get straight into the matters. We'll start off with a revenue mobilization exercise by the Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG. Yesterday, they disconnected the head office of the Ghana Water Limited, as well as some installations of the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. The company, ECG, we have all been complaining about the losses they've been making and the inefficiencies there. Now, the company says it's embarking on this particular exercise to recoup some of the monies owed the company, and so it is leaving no stone unturned. I just want to bring you a few paragraphs from our story on ChannelOneNews.com. Well, technology can fail you sometimes. But basically, the ECG is on this revenue mobilization drive. A step in the right direction. Some are raising issues of a human face, but I want to believe that engagements have been held. Because if you listen to the ECG yesterday, they say that there's a payment plan agreed with these organizations or institutions, but the institutions have reneged and haven't lived up to or haven't played their part in these arrangements. Obviously, I'll start with you. It looks as though the ECG always waits for these bills or debts to pile before they embark on some of these drives. From what you said, that's how you say it.
That cannot be the case in every instance. For instance, if you are talking about water, we all say water is life.
Yeah.
So if ECG decides to disconnect water because of bills, the consequences for everybody is huge. So sometimes they look at the effect of disconnecting an institution and think that it's better to judge than just to go and disconnect. The issue is that they are both utilities, and there are major issues affecting both of them. So sometimes ECG will understand why it cannot hold Ghana Water to strict account, because both ECG and Ghana Water are 100% owned by the state, and it's the state that must invest in institutions for them to be effective. If you look at their books for maybe the past 20 years, you will not find any significant investment from the state into these institutions in terms of retooling them with modern equipment to actually cut down their technical problems. Also, you look at it and you realize that consistently, anytime PURC actually pegs the
tariffs.
rate to tariffs, both ECG and Ghana Water will come out and say that the amount fixed by the regulator is far below what is required to recover their cost of production and distributing the utilities to us. But we ignore them. And so long as the rates or tariffs approved by PURC is below what will enable them to pay for what they are doing, obviously it's a huge loss that we are talking of over there. And then if the state, which is the 100% owner of these institutions, is also not investing to retool and make them effective, it means that they are working with ineffective equipment, archaic equipment, which definitely leads to loss of technical losses. So at the end of the day, both institutions will find themselves in huge debt. The question is, if the tariffs are below what is needed to recover costs, and for us consumers, we are happy that PURC is approving rates that are not commercial level rates. So we are enjoying it. Bottom line is, because the two institutions are 100% owned by the state, when they incur debt, the debt is for us, the people of Ghana, to pay.
Right.
And therefore, this is the kind of situation we find ourselves in. So you see, we, as a country, as I said, we need to explain to our people that if a government will run, it's the people. We finance the government. The government is not a business making any money from anywhere. As I said, if the government does not collect taxes, if it about our natural resources and what comes out of it, loans and grants, these are sources that government is going to make. If government has a SOEs that make some return on investment, fine, adds to what government revenue is. So if we are happy that we are not paying the commercial rates, and these utilities keep complaining every time that the rate approved are below what is needed to recover their cost, and the same government which owns 100% in both companies is not investing to make sure that they cut their technical loss, giving them efficient and modern equipment to make sure that a lot of the technical issues as a result of inefficient equipment can be resolved, then both of them will continue to incur debts. And when they incur debt, the bottom line, government is the shareholder. So government owns the assets and liabilities. So if there's debt, government is the one should be paying. Where is the government paying from? Our taxpayers' money. So we need to face the reality and tell people that, look, if even ECG is retooled or what is to become so efficient today, yet the tariffs approved are below recovery, we will still have the same problem. So until we face these issues boldly, we will just be repeating these things year after year. We can't resolve it because the critical issues that need to be addressed for us to solve the problems, we seem to be shying away from it. And then when exercises like this happen and then disconnections happen, then we are all up in arms because we know that if ECG disconnects Ghana water and their pump stops working, water will not flow to our homes, and I will now be struggling for water. So we'll start talking. Our bottom line is, if we will continually get here, if these two issues I've mentioned are not resolved, and the management of these institutions as well, as you said, apart from institutions that we say maybe hospitals and some other places say they are critical institutions, so they should not be disconnected. There's so much to be done by these institutions, okay? There's so much to be done. You go to even places like Dansuman and other places, as I speak to you today, there are houses that don't have ECG meter. They are on fixed rate. You ask yourself, what is the ECG office in those areas doing that in such prime areas that as of today, still there are homes who don't have meters. They are still running on fixed rate given to them by the I think that we need also to look at massive decisions about management of SOEs. That's one problem. See, most of the times, it becomes like appointment to this a reward for people who help party to come to power. So we are not rather looking at whether the person is delivering efficiency or not. That's what I've always said. That me, if any president comes and says, if I'm appointing you as SOE head, give me a plan as to how you are going to fix these problems. Okay? The resource you need to fix it, I'll give it to you. But then if you feel I'm sacking you because I want the systems to work. Until we get to that point, the CEO will come and tell you that, but we wanted government to do this investment. Government didn't do it. The rates when they brought it, we said it's not enough. So if you are accusing us that we are not working enough, where do we get the money to go around and do these things? And I think that they also need to be very, very customer friendly. Because sometimes you pass by, you see a Ghana water best pipe. You even call, if you are not somebody like a journalist who know maybe somebody at the top, and call the person and say you've seen a big pipe best and water is wasting here. Sometimes you call the normal lines and sometimes people will not even answer. Sometimes when they answer, oh, okay, we will report to the whatever the fault team, and that they will come. 3 days, 4 days, you pass by, and the water is still leaking. The question is, who is monitoring to make sure that in that area, the officer in charge is not doing his or her work, and the person is held accountable that, look, when this report was filed, we have it here, but 3 days later, the thing is still there. Why is that nobody acted on it? So I think that there are a couple of issues in these utilities. And you see, The reason we need to fix utilities is that it's clear that all of us cannot live without them.
True.
Today, if you are at home and the sun is a bit hot and there is no electricity, you realize that you find it's uncomfortable being in your own house without electricity. If you wake up in the morning and there's no water, look, Dansuma, where I stay, like 4 days, up to about 3 days ago before the water came, the water just went off without any announcement from Ghana Water.
Very well.
We woke up and the water was not flowing. Nobody told us anything.
Right, thank you.
We were hoping it would come, it would come. For 4 or 5 days, there was no water. Now we have to be running around with yellow 4 gallons to be looking for water.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'll come to Hamza, but let me say good morning to the Honorable Isaac Manyako, MP for Efia. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
It's good to have you again.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
right.
you. And good morning to my long-time friend who has abandoned me, Elvis.
You see the politician, he knows I'll say that, so he has said
So
it.
the best way to defend is to attack. But Hamza, let me come to you on this revenue mobilization exercise by the ECG. It looks like one utility taking on the other. But the warning they have issued actually is that if they follow through with the payment plan, then they will go and disconnect the pumping stations of Ghana Water. And that will mean wahala for you and I.
Good morning to you, and of course my colleagues in the studio, and most importantly to our cherished viewers out there. I can understand the relationship between Honorable and what's his name? Elvis. Maybe we need to investigate it further to see where
But if you understand,
probably
then there's no need for investigation.
I'm saying that for the sake of our general public, maybe we may be let into some of the political happenings between the two of them way back, so that we can better situate our political positions on this table. If I'm alone on this table, then I'll know how to position myself. Anyway, having said that, you see, this is not surprising to me.
No.
In all honesty, I think that this is long overdue. We have reached a stage in our national governance architecture where we must give institutions the backing. And if I say the backing here, I'm making reference to the political backing to actually act independently when it comes to fulfilling its mandate and objectives as far as the country is concerned. And for me, when I heard the news yesterday, that was a kind of impression I got. I told myself that perhaps, maybe like the president indicated when he met the CEOs of state-owned enterprises. You remember, one of his cardinal promises, even before the general elections, had to do with a promise to ensure that we begin to run our state-owned enterprises in such a way that they are productive and they actually live true to its mandate and be able to turn around in terms of his ability to make profits. Upon assumption of office, he took it a bit further. That is why he is now empowering SIGA to ensure performance contracts amongst these state-owned enterprises. Inevitably, if the presidency or the government is now committed to ensuring that CEOs sign performance contracts with SIGA, what it simply means is that even the presidency or political actors would be careful in terms of how they interfere in the running of these institutions, because the CEOs know that their respective jobs are at stake. And so they would not allow themselves to be influenced by influence peddlers holding political positions or who are closer to the corridors of power. When in actual sense, if they allow such things to happen, their own appointments would be at risk. So for me, I feel that that is the way for us to go. And when I heard that Ghana Water Company Limited in particular was owing, I was like, what the hell is happening in this
Close
country?
to 1 billion cedis.
Is it not this same Ghana Water Company Limited, we were told by the Attorney General, reached an agreement with the former director of the NSB, alleged that in excess of about 1.5 million Ghana cedis was being paid to one of the clone companies of the said gentleman monthly for internet services. So if the Ghana Water Company Limited, under the erstwhile regime, could afford 1.5 million Ghana cedis to service a so-called internet service job, or isn't it? Contract.
Yeah.
In terms of fulfillment of the payment of the money. That is 1.5 million, I'm told, to NSB. Why is it struggling? That same organization, why must it struggle to pay monthly
Electricity
ECG,
bills. Yeah.
electricity bills? Why? So you see that it has to do with priorities.
Yeah.
So clearly, it has to do with the level of management that we subject them to. Sometimes I think that we unnecessarily overburden central government in terms of even how we decide to distribute our criticisms. Because I have always argued that we have reached a stage in this country where chief executives must themselves be held accountable for their actions. Let us see how they are running their respective organizations. And so we can judge them accordingly. But this lazy approach of lumping everything on the doorstep of government creates that protective layer for many of them to continue to be inefficient. Especially even when they are appointed to bring some kind of meaningful transformation to these sectors. So I would want to see how SIGA, going ahead, would be able to evaluate the performance of these current CEOs in line with the vision of His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama, that commitment to ensuring that they work according to their mandate without unnecessary or undue interference. This is very important. And you see, it is not just Ghana Water Company Limited alone. I'm told even Ghana Broadcasting Corporation also had to be disconnected, I think yesterday or so.
Yeah, as well as some private
Then again, we're all in this country. Is it the African Cup of Nations? No. There was this West African Games that was organized just before the general elections. And we're told of the unimaginable, questionable expenditures that came at the back of that transaction. And one is left wondering. So even within that space, that in excess of about $3 million was released under the guise of airing that so-called West African Games. Excuse my language, not so-called, because indeed it was West African Games. So there was no way the management could have squeezed out some little amount of money geared towards defraying the indebtedness of Ghana Broadcasting Corporation to ECG. So then again, it has to do with priorities. Because we do not take debts we owe to other state institutions seriously as state institutions. Because we feel that the government would intervene anytime ECG is going to disconnect. Or even Ghana Water Company Limited is going to disconnect. Because it's a service provided from one government institution to another government institution. So the incentive by managers of these state institutions to even fulfill their debt obligations to ECG is not there. And these are some of the questions we should be asking. When it comes to the inefficiencies of ECG, that is another leg altogether. But you cannot talk about inefficiencies of ECG without linking it to how other state institutions are emboldened, because ECG is largely owned by government. So even those state institutions are themselves emboldened in terms of their unwillingness to service their debts. How do you expect ECG to be effective and perform? So the inefficiency is not just about the performance of employees of ECG. You realize that in a way it can also be argued to be imported from other state institutions into the operations of ECG. And these are some of the questions we should be looking at. And like I indicated, I am glad that His Excellency President Mahama has shown that indeed there will be that monitoring when it comes to the performance of these state institutions. And so it's consoling. But beyond that promise, beyond the commitment of the president, it must take the CEOs to be able to operationalize and give meaning to that vision. And knowing His Excellency
the onus lies with management of these institutions.
But knowing His Excellency President Mahama, if they fail to take that caution seriously, he is a man, I am convinced, who would be driven to act in the interest of the nation. But Interestingly, there's one point we are even missing in the news, and it is because of our over-concentration on the activities of state-owned enterprises in relation to this disconnection exercise. There are many other private entities.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned yesterday. Some of these private institutions
and
were
interestingly,
disconnected.
Many of them are hotels and restaurants, and you simply cannot bring your head around the huge sums of monies they owe ECG, especially knowing that almost every evening these restaurants or hotels are mostly full to capacity.
That's why I was asking that why do we always wait for the bills to pile up to this extent?
If we can, yes, it doesn't make sense, Nana. If we can understand.
Perhaps they have payment plans, but these institutions fail to honor their obligations. And I'm saying that once you notice this failure, immediately you should act. You don't wait for the figure
I
to
agree
grow.
with you. And so that also raises, and but you see, again, that raises the issue of efficiency in another angle when it comes to the performance now of ECG as an institution. They should be able to intervene. But it will interest you to know that many of these restaurants, you go behind the ownership structure and you have political functionaries or
politically exposed
persons being shareholders of these entities. And so even when the time comes for them to honor their ECG debt obligations, they can go behind the scenes and make the necessary calls to still get these organizations to be hooked onto the national grid. So we must be interested. And we must have a detailed station team, especially at the ECG, mandated to go into some of these organizations to be able to monitor compliance when it comes to debt servicing. And the public must know them. For instance, if you are appointing a director in charge of recoveries of private enterprises, especially in the hotel industry, or those running what do you call it? Hospitals, private hospitals. That sector. Let us know the person, the director in charge. Let us measure his performance at the end of the month or 2 or 3 months. How he's been able to recover. So that many of these political machinations where one can call ECG to buy some time and they end up not paying, but Imperial Perkins and the likes. If you look at the list, Nana, just a minute. It is just unbelievable. It is mind-blowing. Because you have
it's actually a long list.
It's a long list. You have the likes of Daisy Hospital Limited, Star Life Company Limited, Boachi and Mattress Ghana. You have, my goodness, even MPA head office, unbelievable. A state institution.
Power.
Then you have Power.
Ghana National Gas.
Ghana National Gas Company.
Lands Commission.
You see, and you have Town Palace. What the hell is happening in this country? So you realize that it has to do with a commitment. It is not there. But then again, why would these private institutions be encouraged to pay? When they monitor the media on daily basis and also wake up to the unacceptable practices politicians use ECG for. You remember in 2023 alone, ECG exceeded its budget by about 7.3 billion. Another reckless manifestation of leadership. So even that motivation to pay would not be there, because even those who are supposed to administer it are themselves being reckless at the top. You had a situation where the system allowed or closed attention, or if you like, decided to move attention away from the activities of ECG, where they even imported materials that they were not that were not needed.
There are meters in the system that are not even functioning.
So clearly, if I am a private businessman and I am monitoring things like that, even the motivation to be able to pay my dues, my debts would not be there. So finally, I think that we must, those of you in the media especially, Nana, I am interested in the president's promise to ensure that our state-owned enterprises begin to yield positive results. And the responsibility entrusted on SIGA especially to ensure that they sign performance contracts. I think that the time has come for those of you in the media to lead the charge like you did in the Galamsey fight. let us be partners, important partners in that exercise, because that is the only way we can begin to see real progress when it comes to the leadership of this country.
Very well. Thank you, Hamza. Honorable, let me come to you on this revenue mobilization drive. The ECG, were you in Parliament when you were disconnected? I think it was last year. You were not there then. Very well. Very well.
So it's very interesting to realize that ECG has started this revenue mobilization exercise to either collect debt from owing entities or disconnect them if they fail to pay, or come up with some reasonable payment plan.
Yeah.
That is supposed to be part of the routine function of any organization, because the organization has a responsibility to collect all revenue from services that they have rendered, particularly when ECG itself buys power from other agencies and has to pay them. This perennial challenge of government owings to either VRA or Gridco and the rest all emanates from the inability of ECG, who is the final taker who sells the power, to collect as much as it has sold and pay back to those entities. From Parliament's point of view, we've had conversation, I think last week at the committee level. We met ECG itself, we met VRA, we've met Gridco to look at their books. And it's very worrying to realize that some of these companies like Gridco don't even collect up to 40% of services that they've rendered to ECG. And so how do they function? They generate all the power, they give it to you, you go and sell and bring me back the money, and you are unable to even pay me back up to even 40% of what they sell. So it's like a circus. We go around and then we are unable to. Now the question is, why are we where we are? Why are we there? We are where we are because, again, you take it from, like Elvis started with, what is the amount that we as a people ought to pay? The right tariff that we ought to pay. So we need to arrive at a conversation where we agree that people ought to pay what they have to pay for electricity. We have the opportunity this time, with this depreciation of dollar or CD appreciation, to get PURC, review the tariffs to at least break-even point. And if we miss that opportunity, then we are in for trouble. So the first point is PURC should set tariffs to the levels where ECG or any other company like Ghana Water would be able to collect what they are supposed to collect from the sales that they make. So that is the first point. The second question is, when even government sets up this appropriate tariff, does the agencies have the capacity to do the collection access? We've been talking about distribution and then collection losses, which works up to system losses of about 30%. The last meeting that we had with them, NETCO said they have system losses of 31%.
Wow.
So how do you run an organization and you lose a third of the power that you are generating to system and operational losses? So it means, and then when you lose 30%, you are also unable to collect 30%. So they are also collecting just about 30% of the power that is being generated and sold to them. So it's a very difficult position. But let's take it from where ECG itself has started. ECG, when I was in Ghana Revenue Authority, they were one of the biggest debtors to GRA. In fact, on a monthly basis, they are unable to even pay what they declare as taxes to GRA. And it became perennial to the extent that ECG carried almost about 80% of the total government debt that GRA was holding in billions. In billions. So we had to go around.
Can you recall which period this was?
Oh, it's been perennial for almost for the past 3-4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so today, if you go to GRA books, I'll not be surprised that ECG continues to pile up its debt. GRA also wanted to go and close down ECG. And we had a lot of government intervention. They put it under the waterfall system and nothing came out of it. So it is important for us as a country to re-engineer all of these things. Ghana Water, why is Ghana Water unable to pay its ECG? There are certain debts that are statutory. You cannot function as Ghana Water if you don't have electricity. But again, as Hamza said, it's about prioritization. Because they think they are getting it from another government organization, they will go and do all the needless procurement. Go and procure things that are for personal benefits. Go and check their goods and services list. Then you see where the priorities lie. And so it is important for ECG to take these steps to send a signal to everybody that you can't be allowed to benefit from a power that you don't pay for. And it is important again from management point of view, with all these lists that have come, that we don't go back. So one, all of these recoveries should be made. And then you put in measures to avoid the recurrence of these arrangements, so that at least you generate and recover as much as you can. And then when there are arrears, we can think of how best government through this one Ghana CD energy levy, which has now been suspended, and we don't know how government is going to fill that gap. And so the looming energy problems that we face, we don't even know how government is going to turn itself around. Now come to the private companies that are still owing. How did that happen? Is it that ECG was unaware? And if they were aware, who allowed those debts to pay? It can't even happen for 2 months that somebody should operate and not pay his electricity bills.
So you think somebody should be held accountable?
Somebody should be held accountable. Not just for the collection sake, but ECG should sanction. Why don't we have area directors and area heads for these places? What happened? So we should be able to hold people accountable for the jobs we put them in. And then not to play this public scenes. These ones are meant for big enterprises like GBC, Ghana Water, that you know decisions are taken at higher level to stop ECG from performing its mandate. But when it comes to private sector debt, that one there is no excuse. If someone owes and can't pay, he comes with a payment plan. If they fail, you take them off. And so we should be mindful from management point of view that people should be held responsible for these actions and inactions. And I think that from Parliament and government side, we should all have a roundtable conversation around how best we would solve the issue between ECG, Ghana Water. But then Ghana Water should be accountable for the electricity that they consume. That one is non-negotiable. And ECG itself, as I said, when you look through their books, even when they collect money, and we said it at committee level, statutory payments that they should make to other agents, they don't make it. And so if they are doing this to other companies, then they should be ready to also fulfill all their obligations so that the country can run on a smooth manner. So that would be my...
Very well. Thank you very much, Honorable. This is the News Review segment here on Breakfast Daily. We'll take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. Stay with us. Grateful that you stayed on with us. The station is ChannelOne TV. The program is Breakfast Daily, and the segment is News Review, where we have a conversation regarding some of the topics that are dominating the news space. We just dealt with the issue of the ECG and its revenue mobilization exercise. Let's do some politics now. The New Patriotic Party, NPP, yesterday met. It was a National Executive Committee meeting in Accra, and one of the important updates from that meeting is that the party is set to hold its presidential primaries in January 2026. They've set January 31 as the date for this primaries. I'll start with the Honorable Isaac Mwawa on this because that's the party you belong to. Why are you not doing party elections before presidential primaries?
Well, we've just come out of an election, 2024, where we lost. Some would say badly, bitterly.
And what would you say?
Oh, I think we didn't do well at all. We performed below expectation. Because averagely, if you go into an election between NDC and NPP, you want to do minimum 45%. And then if you have an opportunity to do second round. But it's always a difficulty after 8 years. We've seen that as a practice. We only wanted to break the 8. That was our mantra. But unfortunately, we lost. And after that defeat, it was important to have an introspection. So a committee was set by headed by Professor Michael Kwe, to give us feedback as to what were the reasons, some of the reasons that contributed to our loss. The Okwe report was submitted to our National Executive Committee and the National Council. So they deliberated on it. The party was asked to also make proposals for reforms, which would guide us on the best way to proceed going into the next election, which is 2028. And so yesterday, the National Council and the National Executive Committee meetings were to deliberate on some of these reforms proposals that have come up, so that they would at first hand take it into consideration and then come back to Congress, which is the Delegates Conference, to endorse or otherwise make other contributions to these decisions. And so that is where we are. We're getting feedback from the close of those meetings. And one of the major conversations had been the need to elect a flag bearer. You know, our constitution stipulates that when we are out of government, we should elect our flag bearer not later than 2 years before the next general election. And so it is up to the National Council to make a determination as to when exactly we should do it. Now, we've had practical occasions where before we hold those presidential elections, we commence with our process at the bottom, where we do police station elections, we do electoral area coordinators, you come to constituency, go to regional, national, before we come to presidential. And so people were of the view that we go through that same practice before we lean to the national and presidential election. But this time there were another school of thought that why not do top down, whereby we elect the presidential candidate and then we can follow through to the bottom.
Is it because the bottom-up approach has failed you?
Oh, I don't think so. You know, you always have to tweak things to see whether you can have some benefits, because all of that come with its attendant positives and negatives.
Right.
One of the positives from where we are coming from, if you do top down, is that you don't go through a bitter process from the bottom, because when you go from the bottom, some people will be included, others may be excluded from the process through elections, and then it creates its own problems at the bottom. Then it moves on up to the constituency level. It creates people, faction. People think you need to put my guy in to be able to vote for the presidential candidate, and so you have a whole lot of struggles there too. It creates problems. You move to the regional level, and it all has its own implications.
So you think that top to bottom approach will rather solve the internal wranglings?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying I'm talking about some of the practical challenges that we face when it comes to
the bottom up approach.
Now, this consideration is that why not? We already have a college that had done an election of the previous one. So even before we go through the process of electing coordinators and all of those, let's clear the presidential.
Okay.
Because now you already have an existing college. So clear the presidential, and once you are done with the presidential, there will be no more interest at the bottom level for people to be working and scheming against and amongst themselves. But from where I sit, I say that the party is for all of us. Anybody that is a true NPP person have to show their cause, whether you come into play as an executive or not. Because I say in my elections, when you come to my constituency, total delegates were 500. But the larger community that voted for me were about 20,000. So why would you want to put the power to elect, whether it is flag bearer or it is a parliamentary candidate, in the hands of a small group of people? And then at the end of the day, it creates unnecessary bitterness, unnecessary confusion. And so if you are a true party person, whether we expand the electoral college to 2 times the current size or what have you, it doesn't take who is necessarily the presidential candidate to win as an election. You can come and bring Jesus Christ to be your presidential candidate. If the things that we need to do, the unity that we need to build, the oneness that we need to have, the strength of building the party at the base, going back to our people and speaking to them to understand the philosophy and the thinking of the party, that selflessness that built this party, until we go back to our roots and get it done, it really doesn't matter who your presidential candidate is. And so I am not of a position to say it is Kennedy Japan who is best, or is Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia who is best. Anybody that the people choose to lead our party, all we need to do as a people is to rally behind them, come together, unite, and do it. So, top down, bottom up, the value is the same for me.
Yeah, sure.
The value is the same. Because it is not who we are electing that is the game changing. NDC had Mahama. Mahama was the presidential, was the president. He lost the elections. He contested again. He lost. They had to do their homework, build the party, rebrand the party. The party was known to be for people who are down, people who are uneducated. They've been able to make the party come to a point where educated people are enticed. My brother said those days, if you want to find lawyers for NDC, you can't find them. Now there are so many lawyers that the lawyers even can't get appointment. Oh, come on. No, I'm talking from where we No.
They have always been modest.
No.
Well.
Oh, okay. So you take it from modesty.
They make the most noise. That has always been. So the likes of Prophet.
No.
Yeah.
We are not making noise about it.
You're right.
You had what?
The likes of Chachi. Why are we making noise?
The
about
Tony
it?
Latest.
One, two, video,
never made noise.
One, two, video, but you know, exactly.
So wrap up for me and then let's hear from
So my argument is that NDC did some work on the party that made it possible for them to be where they are today. So we, as New Patriotic Party, ought to also look at what we need to do to rebrand and reposition the party to be able to be more competitive at our next election. And to do that, it's not on our elections for who becomes flag bearer or who becomes what. It is the internalization of the beliefs of the party, the love for the party, the sacrifices for the party, the need for the party to unite, and the party to say that to take power from the NDC, all of us have to think through hard, work extra hard to convince Ghanaians that what President Mahama is doing now If even he fulfills his mandate, we can do better. For which reason they should vote for us. I'm not of the position that Mahama should underperform, upon which NPP should come to power. No.
Because you underperformed and Mahama came to power.
Do well, move Ghana forward, but we should come with superior ideas to tell Ghanaians that even with all the achievements that President Mahama would have chalked, we, when they vote for us,
can do better.
These are the things that we have to move Ghana forward.
Very well. Hamza, the last time the NPP went through this process, they had to do a round 2. And it inched them closer to the election, the general election date. And now they want to do their primaries quite early to afford the candidate who emerges winner ample time to market him or herself ahead of the 2028 election. From where you said, is this a considerable threat?
I think, first of all, it is important for me to quickly correct the impression that my brother sought to create on the platform.
You have the men.
You see, when it comes to the politics of the NDC, we've always been moderate because that's why we're a social democratic party.
Right.
We are careful not to privilege or overemphasize our academic credentials.
Right.
Because we know the kind of people we represent as a political party. That is not the same as not having them. And that, quick recap of history. You remember the likes of Obeda Samoa, one of the celebrated lawyers in the country, the likes of Chachuchu Kata.
Yeah.
When they were in their prime, where were the NPP lawyers you could speak about? If you take many of the acts that today, that is the foundational basis in terms of our legal architecture for many of our state enterprises, it was driven and pioneered by leading members of the National Democratic Congress who were lawyers. Take the Road Fund Act, for instance. And our decentralization concept, driven by the likes of Professor Kwame Nkrumah.
Yeah.
But the difference, my brother, is that we are a group of people who are moderate, even when it comes to celebrating our academic achievements. Before the advent or the emergence of Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, the NDC had celebrated lawyers who in the past handled our economy much more international repute than Dr. Bawumia would ever have. But we did not make noise about it. That is your specialty. You take one of yours and you decide to brand him as the alpha and omega of a particular fault.
Very well. Now they are looking for one to lead the party.
To make that point.
Now they are looking for one to lead the party.
See,
so let's go
again, your question was a bit problematic.
How
in the
so?
sense that, you see, they've never done that before. This is the first time they are doing
Exactly.
it. So for you to bring the 2007, they said they have done it. They did it before in 2007 and led to the second round. I think I disagree.
No, no. You didn't get my question. I'm referring to the second round in the general elections.
Okay.
I'm referring to their primaries.
No, I'm also making references to the primaries in the 2007-2008. Remember? It was not.
I'm even referring to the recent one. That's 2023.
Yes.
And how close it brought them to the 2024 general elections.
Yes, but they didn't do a top-down approach, and they didn't do it
Yes,
early.
I'm saying that because of the timing, which, if you like, they didn't do it early, and so perhaps not enough time to market the candidate.
I will respond.
That's where I'm coming from.
I get you, Nana. Now I get the perspective you are pushing. You see, when the news broke yesterday, I felt terribly sorry. In all honesty.
Why?
For the grassroots of the new patriotic party. And to a very large extent, citizens of the Republic who were hoping to contribute meaningfully to bringing about change in the politics of the new patriotic party so that it could be positioned as a viable alternative to the National Democratic Congress and continue to do its role as one of the biggest opposition parties we have in the country. Unfortunately, that opportunity would not only be lost by the grassroots of the NPP to inject some change, but to also, that opportunity will be lost to the ordinary Ghanaian who were hoping to be part of the process to reform the new patriotic party. And I can tell you without any shadow of doubt that the motivation behind the early Congress is driven by the appetite for control and not driven by an agenda to rebuild.
Controlled by who?
By Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and his clique. Whichever way you look at it, the initiative to organize an early Congress is simply driven by the motivation to control, not an opportunity to rebuild and ensure transformation in the politics of the NPP. And that is why I feel like this party, under this current leadership, seem to be doing Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia so much harm. Because where I sit, you can turn the ace up or down. Whether Congress is held today or a year from now, I know that Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is in a better position to lead the New Patriotic Party than any of the contenders.
This is your own assessment,
yes, from
your
where I
own
sit,
opinion.
in all honesty. And I will be hugely surprised if Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is not given the opportunity to lead. But he must learn useful lessons. He must not allow these guys to destroy the responsibility the party will be entrusting upon him to reform before even he starts that agenda. And this is a harmless advice to him and his campaign team. Why am I saying this? Nana, you are dealing with a political party that elected Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia in government amidst problems. Indeed, even before his election, from their constituency executive level to national, we were told that the government used its influence then in determining who occupies which position and where. These were the concerns. And so even many of your people on the ground made those decisions based on the expectation of benefits, not driven by strategy. So your constituency level to the national executives, to an extent that even in the eventual election of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, many of your flag bearer contenders raised issue with this same National Council and National Executive Committee and accused them of bias. You are fortunate now to be in opposition, and you have been given a beautiful opportunity to rebuild. What do you do out of power? Go and test their popularity. And in testing their popularity, you are opening up the party for true reform without the restrictions of power. Because you are outside power.
Is that not what they did with the thank you talk?
No, I'll get there. How is Thank you talk giving them an opportunity to make
you are testing
to
popularity.
transform? You are changing your structures.
No, you mentioned testing popularity. That's what I mentioned.
Yes, I give them the opportunity to. But how is test? How is? Please. I'll get you. Yes.
Please.
How is? Thank you to testing the popularity of constituency and regional executives and national executives. Tell me how. So these are the points I'm making. And that is why this is a very problematic journey to lead Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia on. And you see, Nana, we must first of all interrogate this National Executive Council and their decisions since they were constituted. This is the same National Executive Council and National Executive Committee that presided over the election of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, the Congress that elected Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. And we still remember the likes of Boachi Ajako, Ken Ofori, Kennedy Ajapong, and the tantrums they threw against their decisions. Accused them of bias before your Congress. You see, at a point, some of the regions were engulfed in chaos. A place like Northeast region that Kennedy Ajapong had to complain about because people were beaten mercilessly and assaulted. Remember the showdown comment? That was what birthed the showdown comments. I'll give them a showdown. So these were decisions of this current National Executive Committee and National Council. You crossed that hurdle. It was their decisions and their judgment that informed your election strategy for the 2024 election. Now I'm interrogating the decisions of this executive and National Council so far.
And wrap up.
And you know, please, you gave him so much time. No, but I'm a member, I'm a citizen of this country. I deserve that. No, don't do that. No, that's not true. You see, because our constitution, our constitution recognizes their role. And so I am as interested in their affairs. You see, it is the same National Executive Committee that presided over the election process. And that led to the abysmal performance ever of the New Patriotic Party. You cannot simply say that your defeat was largely or solely because of the activities of government, of the party in government then, or government officials.
Right.
To a very large extent, the national executives of your party and the National Council, their decisions as how to conduct the elections also had a bearing on the performance of the party. Upon defeat, it is the same National Executive Committee and Council that decided for the first time in your party's history that all those who contested for flag bearership, not just Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, should come together as a team in the collective to embark on a nationwide thank you tour, when indeed it was only Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia who was the person on the ballot. And in the history of all the political parties, was actually the one to lead the process and invite others to do. That faulty decision led you on a path of conflict that marred the beauty and objective of your National Executive Committee, of your thank you tour. These are their decisions. Today, that same National Executive Committee, in fact, even before that, they recommended and approved that your choice of a running mate, Matthew Opoku Prempeh. Today, that same National Executive Committee is advising you that you should go for an early Congress. And you are defending it, and you think that it is in the interest of the survivor of your political party and an opportunity for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia to have control. Look at the history of our political parties.
This decision is not subject to approval by the delegates conference.
I'm sure they have taken a decision.
Yeah, the decision is.
You should have opened the opportunity at the branch level. Let the change, the agenda to transform, start at the branch level. Then you move to your constituency. Give the people. Now nobody's in power, nobody's in an influential position of power to influence. Then they make their decisions at the constituency level, then reflect same at the regional level, then reflect same at the national level. Then when that transformation is done, you have given a holistic national picture for them to now determine who leads the political party. And so if Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia comes out of the process, he himself would have been a product of transformation in power. But the very people who elected him to that role are going to be the very people today who elect him again to lead the party in January.
Very well, very well.
So you see, the NPP, that is why I said that, and I pity them. You see, your incompetence is not only, or did not only show in the way you manage this country when you are given the opportunity, but it is even continuing to show
in the management of the party's affairs.
Even with the way you are handling your own internal political party affairs. That is clearly worrying.
Very well, Hamza.
It does not augur well
for
the betterment of your party. And I fear that if you are not careful with the path you are going, the likes of the CPP will begin to do better than the NPP in elections.
You have worse challenges to do.
Thank you, Hamza. Let me continue on the NPP's internal affairs and the decision to go into presidential primaries in January 2026. An entirely different approach from what we've seen them do over the years, the bottom-up approach. Some argue that if the flag bearer, like they are doing now, is elected first, then everyone else, or it takes away the factionalism that will come up at the grassroots. Others also argue that if the bottom-up approach is maintained, then everyone at the bottom knows who, the bottom, those at the bottom who are actually going to do the fiscal campaign works would be established even before we go into the presidential primaries. Your take on this change that the NPP has set?
Even before that, let me just make a comment on the previous topic.
The ECG matter.
Yeah. The signing of performance contracts didn't start today. Since SIGA was set up, CEOs have been signing performance contracts. So it's not anything new.
Right.
But if you read the state ownership report, which captures the performance of state-owned enterprises each year. I think you can get about 4 or 5 years report on their website. You understand the situation better when you read that report.
Very well.
And we are questioning, why is private enterprise owing? I also support that if private enterprise owe, ECG should disconnect them. But you see, ECG is also mindful of the impact on the same economy. If a manufacturing firm is unable to pay bills, and you say, oh, you are not be able to pay, so I'm disconnecting you. ECG will disconnect all the private companies. The unintended consequences will be huge unemployment. Because you disconnect the companies, they're not working,
There's
so
no
all the
work,
workers have to go home.
Very well.
The little taxes government will get in pay and the rest will be gone. So you see, ECG is not like entertaining those private companies for any particular reason.
Right.
They also look at the unintended economic consequences of saying, we are just going to disconnect you if you fail your payment plan. Because then, what then happens to your productivity as a country if the private enterprises are disconnected for owing electricity bills? What happens to employment and others? So I know that ECG wish they could disconnect all these private companies so long as they owe. But then when they look at the general economic impact that will also have by just disconnecting because somebody owe, they also look at all the other factors and think that it's better to continue to see if the people will pay. So when we look at the private sector, we just jump at it. We should also be careful. Even when we are saying that the tariffs are not enough, if you look at the general sub-region, our electricity is one of the most expensive. If you look at the issue, so the sectors have said there are issues, and I know that the current energy minister, all those in charge of the power sector, or they know the problems of these sectors, but they are not willing to take those bold decisions to fix them. That's the bottom line. So those issues,
points well noted.
sometimes when we
matter.
sit there, we
Let's move on.
castigate the utility as if they are just there to run us down. When you go details, as if you read the state ownership report, you read other things they talk. I'll talk about ECG owing. Yes, GRA. It's true. But if you look at ECG's revenues, you look at what they are supposed to collect, and if you look at the fact that their contracts are signed in dollars, and they have to collect the money in CDNP, and we were suffering depreciations, and by the time they collect the money, it's not even enough to pay the power generators, let alone for them to buy one transformer that is sponsored before even thinking about the tax obligation. So the tax obligation now becomes the last option because that's government money. But the utility has to run. So if they don't pay the generators, how do they get the power to distribute? So there are issues there. You see, political parties, when they lose elections, they want to find solutions. And it's normal that all kinds of proposals will come. And sometimes they just say, okay, this proposal has been coming back and forth. Let's give it a try. Somebody was telling me that this proposal was first brought to the table by the late Jacob Echebilante.
Okay.
So years back, that he thinks that if they want to deal with this delegates, paying delegates and all the issues, the aspirants going down there to make sure that people who will vote for them are on the register. That is why when it gets to the polling stations and realize somebody is not qualified to be on the register, but somebody has fixed his name there because they know that you vote for this person. And so there are issues there. And so the point is, they want to try something new. The point is, it can be positive, it can be negative. Nobody who can sit here and say, I know the outcome of what this new process will be. It will just be a guess. The issue that is at stake is that why did the NPP lose an election? The NPP lost an election because within their own support base, there are major issues. There were major issues that were not addressed. The question is, the early Congress, is it the one that is going to address those issues within the party? NPP can never win 2028 elections if the issues within the party that led to its defeat are not thoroughly addressed. NPP will have a good chance of giving NDC a run for their money in 2028 if the issues within their fold, they have been able to address them. See, you need that 45% of your base to come out and vote for you in an election before you are looking for the remaining percentage to add to it to win an election. What happened to the NPP if they look at the figure? They clearly can see that their members decided that they were not going to vote. They were not going to vote. And if you look at the numbers compared even to 2020, if those who didn't vote had voted for NDC, NPP may have 20%.
Or even less.
Or even less.
Yeah.
But instead of people just decided they won't go to the polls. So even if you look at the number of people who voted in 2024, you compare to those who voted in 2020, even less people voted in the last election than 2020. Even though we actually added more people to the register.
Yeah.
So there's a complete issue within them. They need to know that whether you elect the flag bearer early or you go to the previous process, if the real issues within the party are not fully addressed, their chances of winning an election in 2028 will be slim. Because the point is, see, I always say that a flag bearer is just one person. The people who make you win elections are the people at the ground there. Okay? So if the people at the ground decide they are not going to work for the party because they have issues which have not been addressed, you can bring whoever as the candidate, you will lose the elections. Because the engine that needs to be oiled to do the job for a party to win an election are the people at the grassroots. So if there are issues within the party which affect a lot of people at the grassroots, and you don't address those ones thoroughly, and you go and elect a candidate 3 years ahead of time, and within the 3 years to an election, you are unable to fix those internal issues, there's no way you should be expecting an election victory. So for me, though they have adopted this, I think that they should still put people to the drawing board and still think. Question is, as Hamza Riley said, those who elected the previous people in their primaries, are they the same people going to vote in the next elections?
Yeah.
Are they the same people? If they are the same people going to vote, you ask yourself, their previous vote, how did it reflect in the election?
The election.
Is it fair to say that the same people who voted in the primaries should be the same people who should vote?
To vote again.
You understand? Will it be the solution or even anger people more in the party? Okay? Could the party sit down and say, okay, though this issue has been taken, we think that we can pause a bit. Even if we elect a candidate in June of 2026, it's not bad. Can we rather look at other options? For instance, can we say, let's conduct a poll within our party people across the nation between the two options and find out which one they prefer and use evidence to be able to do that? Can we say, instead of those who elected the previous, because we are changing to go and elect the flag bearer before those at the grassroots, we are not going to use those electoral college people to elect. We want every card-bearing member party within the party, member of the party, to cast a vote to elect the person, because we are electing the flag bearer ahead of the other elections. And we don't want that privilege to be given to the few, which you are trying to avoid. That is why you are changing. Okay? You are trying to avoid the situation of electing the few that elect the flag bearer, and you saw the competition by the flag bearer to influence the election of those people. So then you could say, okay, let's do the flag bearer election in June next year, but from now to December, let's do something within the party. Get a poll conducted. Don't let NPP group do the poll. You can conduct an independent poll organization. Go through Ghana and talk to NPP people. Between the two options, which one do they prefer? Would they prefer the people who elected the previous flag bearers to control, or they want a situation where the electoral college is scrapped, and that if you are a card-bearing member of the party, this is motivation for you now to go and determine who leads. So I think that though the leadership of the party has taken a certain decision, obviously this decision is not going down well with a certain group of people. And if they are able to leverage on it and say, okay, we lost the elections and now they are making similar mistakes, they could deepen the divisions within the party. But if they innovatively decide that, though the National Council, the National Executive Committee has taken this decision, we want to go to the people, leave the Okoye report. We want to go to everybody who thinks that it has interest in the NPP, independent group out of NPP, because the Okoye report was done by NPP people. But if you conduct an independent poll organization and say, go around and find out from NPP people that the National Executive Committee said we should do this, as a party member or somebody who sympathizes with the party, which of the options do you get? The results will give you a certain idea. And then if you ask them, do you think that the delegates who elected the previous flag bearers, should be the same people who should elect? Or you think that we should scrap the electoral college and let different people to do the elections? There may be a lot of suggestions from that poll that may, by December when the results come and you look at it, probably they may change the decision and say, okay, even if we have to go with the election of the flag bearer before the other elections, the people prefer that the electoral college should be scrapped and every member of the party should vote. Then you realize that, okay, if you are choosing this option for flag bearer first, then the voting should not be by a delegate.
Right.
So then you can have a well-informed position because for the electoral, the one that from the polling station, we have done several elections, so you know the issues.
Very well.
So let the people who will come out to vote for you in 2028 inform you of what will make them come out to vote if you do that for them.
Thank you.
But the current process that they've done, I think that the National Executive Committee is just a few group of people. NPP is a big party.
Right.
Okay, so if they hear from a larger chunk of their sympathizers and party members, it will help them. So my suggestion would be the party should immediately commission a study, not by NPP leadership or any group within the NPP. Independent poll organization, okay, to come out. Look, all these elections, I'm waiting for CDD's post-election survey. Every year I read that. It gives you a thorough idea of what informed people not to vote, what informed people to vote, the issues that people voted on. And then you can have a better idea. So I am suggesting to the NPP that, look, the party structure has taken a decision. There are few people. Go to the masses, commission an independent work, let the report come by December, look at it, and then based on that report, then you can say by June, this is what the people who will vote for us are saying. So this is what we will do. So we now shift the election of the flag bearer to June, if that option is there. If the thing reform the existing system with suggestions,
let me go to Honorable.
We now shift. Are you a member of the new patriotic party?
No, I'm saying the NPP will say we. I'm not saying me. I'm not saying me. No, I said NPP will say we.
Right.
No, I'm asking a harmless question. There's nothing wrong with it.
So, will this decision affect the electoral college?
We know and contextualize.
We've heard various thoughts and views and opinions. But what surprises me basically from Hamza and Co is that this is not the first time any of the parties have lost an election.
Sure.
We are behaving as if we are behaving as if the loss of the NPP is our first time we losing an election to bounce back. The NPP has faced more severe challenges that we see now.
But this loss was a battering loss.
Yeah, of course.
You were battered.
But my point is that whatever it is the problem the flag bearer? Is that the problem?
But is the solution an early Congress?
No, so my point is, from a personal party person point of view, who had contested the election, and in my constituency, for the first time since 2012, when the constituency was created, within the metropolis of Sekindi Takrady, where NDC had never won one seat in the metropolis, for the first time, won almost all but two. And then even in my constituency, we lost the presidential and I won the parliamentary. So that tells you clearly that there is a problem. And that problem is bigger than a flag bearer. So as Elvis is saying, we should identify the challenges that we have on the ground with our people. But the
committee did that work for you?
Exactly the point. So what I'm foreseeing with this is to take away that burden of elections of flag bearer so that we can go to the basics and work. And that is where the transformation is coming from. Because as I say, people who are making that decision for the flag bearer, even if you expand to any card-bearing member, the card-bearing members have concerns with the polling station executives, the grassroots. Their problem is not with the flag bearer. The problem from where we sit is with the people that we elect to represent us at the base. Whether they have good conduct, whether they have good relationship, whether when they said those people were benefiting from largesse of the party, whether they extended those benefits to them. These are the concerns that the people at the base are looking at. Now, post our election, you sort the party. When it comes to your party, you have extra. Nobody's talking after that.
1 minute.
It's my party. So, what I'm saying is that I believe the National Council decision, and you know the composition of our National Council. National Council is not party executives only. We are talking about all former presidents, all former general secretaries, all former national chairmen, representatives across the region, members of parliament represent. So it's a huge cross-section of the party. And so a lot of thinking would have gone into why they arrived at that decision, which you and I don't have the facts to.
Very well.
So I believe as a party, we should stick to whatever decision that has been taken. But then we, as the same party, should come together and make sure that whatever the challenges were, and the challenges that made us win the elections are not is unsurmountable.
Very well.
They are
Very well.
matters
Very well. Thank you,
that
Honorable.
when we put ourselves
Thank you,
to
Honorable.
cross.
Hamza.
Yes, briefly.
I bring
think
in this
that-
one again.
Of course, it's only fair that I respond.
Respond
You
to
see,
it.
first of all,
Hamza,
I
you
have
have a
to
minute.
ask my brother Elvis about his choice of the word "we," largely because we know that sometimes in the heat of the moment, you speak out your true heart in terms of where you align. It happens.
In
So
the
that's why I
abundance
needed of the heart, the mouth speaker.
But he was in
So I
reference
just needed to
saying
be
the
sure.
NPP will say we.
No. He just said we. I heard him very well. So perhaps possibly he would need to explain that later if he so decides to. But
Hamza.
having said that, you see, Nana, it is not true.
That
Again, I can understand the averse of the MPP and certain members who have decided to wear the professional or neutral cap, but even with their leaning still being towards the New Patriotic Party, who become quite uncomfortable when certain things are referred to His Excellency President Mahama. That can be understood, but we must stick to the facts. It is not true that in the past, state-owned enterprises CEOs signed performance
Who did
contracts.
this? Siga
No,
said-
please.
Please.
Nana, are you saying that?
No.
Are you saying that you don't know?
No.
Siga.
There's a difference between state-owned enterprises signing performance enterprises with SIGA and the appointed CEOs. Please, it's not true. And the appointed CEOs of the president also signing performance contracts as individual CEOs with SIGA. Go and check.
So the difference here is that the CEOs as an
I signed it because they are
individual
those the
have
president
signed
has appointed
contracts.
and can fire.
Against
and that is
the
why he
organization.
calls all of them. The organizational performance contracts are there.
Right.
They have been there since time
And that's what you're explaining.
But when it comes to the state, the chief
The
executives
CEO.
themselves,
The
that His
CEO.
Excellency President Mahama has appointed. Now, this is the first time he has directed SIGA to sign individual performance contracts with them so that they can be evaluated in terms of their performance and how they engineer transformation.
CEOs
Very well.
also
Please,
signed.
please.
Very well.
You can
We're
check it
running
out.
out
You
of
can
time.
check
Let's
it
do
out.
1 minute
So
on the
I can
NPP and
understand the
then we'll come to
discomfort
Elvis.
because
There's
you
no
cannot
discomfort.
stand
It's
here.
fine. It's fine.
Please,
Honorable,
and
please.
I was
Honorable,
quiet.
honorable, please.
Even though I
Honorable,
disagree,
please.
I was quiet.
Honorable, please.
I can
Hamza,
understand the discomfort.
let's do a minute on the
Yes,
NPP.
so
Your
I
time
can
is up.
understand the discomfort.
Very well.
Especially when it comes to those who do not want anything good to be associated with President Mahama. I appreciate that. Now finally to the New Patriotic Party.
Yes.
You see, I think I have spoken extensively, Nana, on the issue. And my only harmless advice to my brothers in the MPP is that, like Elvis indicated, you have also said that there are certain problems at the grassroots level.
Yeah.
And the grassroots members may not be interested in seeing their constituency executives, even there. But you have erroneously concluded that they do not have a problem with your flag bearer, but their problem is only
At the
to a large
grassroots.
extent. That is a dangerous proposition to make because you have not conducted any survey. Please.
I didn't say they no.
so-
If you quote it,
okay,
quote me right.
so-
I didn't say they, I said
The problem with the loss is not the flag bearer.
you cannot say that is not with the flag bearer because the flag bearer was an important player as far as the outcome of the elections
Well,
are
when
concerned.
you lost-
But you see,
when
Nana,
Mahama lost the election
the most
by 500,000,
important thing,
you see the
is I can understand. Like I,
Honorable,
please,
Honorable,
why are
please.
you so
Our time is
uncomfortable?
actually
Why
up.
is so jittery? Nana, you see, as for the loyalists of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, I know that they want to use an early Congress to consolidate his control over the New Patriotic Party, because they are thinking that that is an effective way for them to silence all the dissenting voices. But you see, at this stage, they do not need dissenting voices to be silenced.
Thank you,
they
Hamza.
need
Thank
to
you.
give them an opportunity
Thank
to
you, Hamza.
continue to
Thank
air
you,
their
Hamza.
frustrations.
Elvis,
And with
time is
time,
up.
they would be in a
Our time is
position
up.
to respond to many of these things. But as for the attempted calculation that indeed the NDC won the last election because NPP people didn't come out, being propagated by certain members of the NPP and their associates, we will lead them to that erroneous position.
Our time is up.
But we know
gentlemen,
what actually happened.
Unfortunately, you have to forgive me.
Why you let me talk?
I'll make room for you in our next session. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Our time is up. We'll have to leave it here. We'll continue same time tomorrow. But this is Breakfast Daily. We have a lot more on the show coming your way. Please stay with us.